welcome back to the More in Common podcast, part 2 with Benjamin Mathis. If you haven't heard the first part, definitely go check that out. This is a continuation of that conversation where he just exudes the compassion that we speak of. I really hope that you're getting everything out of this that we did in the conversation with Benjamin. Enjoy the show.
To make this really use an example for the audience, using black and white relations in the U.S. And a thing that Keith we've talked about in a recent episode is the whole the statement "I'm colorblind. I don't see color." To me, what that does for me is that tells me you don't see me, and because I am actually a different color than you. That's just empirically true. When I listen to you say differentiate before we unify, I'm looking at differentiate, and what I'm kind of hearing, what I think I'm hearing you say is listen and see and hear them and acknowledge them, and then we can go work on unifying. But if we cut that step out, we've othered, we've dismissed your being, your needs, the difference that is important. And so I can't see you. So how can we unify when felt seen? So
I want to, I think what a great example, because to make it hyper relevant, especially to today's America, and the black and white issue that shows up in today's America. I remember children are so good, and you both have kids. I don't have kids, but I see it in kids, and I have nephews and nieces and things. And they seem, of course, their ego's not as developed as ours, and I understand that it comes with limitations, of course, right? But it's so fun, and I'm going to tell a story I don't know that I've ever shared. It's been forever. When I was in elementary school out in Stone Mountain, Georgia, our school, my elementary school at the time, was probably 60-40 white to black. And I remember being in 4th grade with my friend CJ Barrow, who was a black kid, and the talent show was coming up, right? And so everyone could, in the 4th grade classroom that I was in, we were to present what we wanted to do for the school talent show, and the students in our class would vote, and the winners from each class in 4th grade got to go. So Miss Farrar's class and Miss Smith's class, whoever it was, the winners each got to do the talent show thing. So CJ and I were good friends. And I remember knowing that I was white and he was black. I do remember knowing that. I also remember knowing that and not knowing that that was supposed to come with judgment. So I didn't realize that was supposed to be a thing because you're a kid. And so he and I put together this comedy routine. And the name of the comedy routine, CJ's on Facebook, I could probably find him. The name of the comedy routine was Things You Can Do with a White and Black Kid. I'm in 4th grade. And we had all of these silly things that we could do together, mixing white and black. And so we made a zebra shape, and we made an Oreo shape, and we did all of these things from, these two kids. I mean, I'm 6 years old or 7 years old, and we're doing, and we thought it was hilarious. Okay. And we put it up in the class. The class laughed, hilarious. Right? The class laughed, and the teacher said, "No, we're not going in that. Yeah. No, you cannot do that." Now I see that if I see how that can be a problematic thing for an adult to do. I get how what we're doing, but at 6 years old, we're seeing what's obvious is that you look different than me, and in some silly way, there's no judgment about that. We're just being silly about it.
Play to those differences.
We can play to those differences. And my teacher at the time, I think she was I don't know what I would do. I don't know, what I would do. And this would have been in the mid 80s. So I don't even know what the culture was like then from an objective point of view. I don't know, because I wasn't old enough really to know that I wasn't supposed to be doing these things. And CJ wasn't supposed to be doing these things. but my teacher at the time, I think she probably did the best she could do. I mean, what would you do? I don't know. And she said that was really creative, and that was, thank you both, but we're gonna let somebody else win or something. And I remember he and I both kind of being bummed out, but I don't think for a second, I know my 6 or 7 year old self and his 6 or 7 year old self had not in any way considered the cultural implications of what we were doing. We were just in acceptance of our very obvious difference, and we were playing with the differences, absent any judgment around the differences or any thought of superiority or inferiority around the differences, like children do. We were connecting dots. Zebras are black and white. We are black and white. We can make a zebra. That's what we did. I don't think I've ever shared that story before.
That's a great story.
It's a phenomenal story. Like, I just love that story.
Adults and the culture that we've created around this, the discomfort around even acknowledging the fact that 2 6-year-olds were like, we could make an Oreo cookie because he's black and I'm white. If you put it together, that's hilarious. That's fucking hilarious. Like, and also like true. So the fact that we made it uncomfortable to be able to say that, I think that's the problem. Not the fact that 2 6-year-olds don't know the cultural implications are all made up bullshit. Like, we should be able to just acknowledge it for what it is, and then we wouldn't have the problems talking about these serious issues with policing and with banking and with politics and redlining and all these things. And they're like, no, there's no issue. Yeah, well, we just don't talk about the issue. We can't talk about it. It's not acceptable to talk about it ever.
Yeah, the difference, I guess, between the 6-year-old me and the 41-year-old me is the ego was not as developed. And so I was able to see the difference without judging it or thinking I was superior or inferior to the difference. And that's kind of, that differentiation. I suppose the healthy ego was there. I was beginning to learn who I was and who he was. That would be a sign of
some split.
Hey, you're different than me. I'm seeing that now. And that is true. You are different than me. And that is the foundation for my boundaries. This is why I don't hit you. This is why I don't sexually harass you. This is why I don't demean you, because I see you as different. And in the difference, you are whole. And then, of course, my ego gets involved, or my unhealthy relationship to my ego gets involved. And I see you as different. And now I want to own that which is different. And it becomes, as Martin Buber would say, it's a I-it relationship. I objectify you. Instead of I and thou. And as the 6-year-old making the zebra, that was I and thou, actually. That was I, thou.
I want to ask, because we've got to get here at some point. You grew up in Stone Mountain, Georgia. How was it for you growing up that ultimately led you to a place that you're very much like a figure around listening? And like, did you have role models? Was it an issue in your house? Like, where did this manifest for you? This compassion you have for other people? That whole essence of you are you, all of that which you are is inside of you, was discovered by you at rock bottom after the divorce, but it was you before then. So what was it like growing up for you?
I mean, I grew up in a very loving environment. So my parents divorced when I was very young. So my story on paper would indicate that I should be really messed up. But in reality, I'm not, and neither is my brother, really. My parents divorced when I was very young. My mom was a single mother, grew up, couldn't run the air conditioning in the summertime in Georgia, very impoverished in a way. And then my dad they're both alive. I say was, they're both alive and doing well. You have to clarify these things.
But they're past influence.
They're past influence.
Really
my dad's just retired, but he ran a nonprofit. He's a Presbyterian minister and ran a nonprofit for a very long time. And I've had 2 stepfathers and 3 stepmothers, and but my dad was always in my life. My mom was always in my life, and we grew up very loved in that way. So there are two major influences, I think, that happened that pertain to your question. One is my dad's work around the world. He's worked in about 40, 50 different countries around the world. He speaks about 10 different tribal languages, African tribal languages, and he's been the first white guy a lot of people have ever seen in the world. And so he spent his life serving the most impoverished people in the world. And so his perspective was always very international, very worldly, very honoring the other and seeing them as the same at the same time. And so he's a master at that and has given his life to bringing healing to others in form of ministry or in form of medical care or in form of finances, whatever the mission was, to bring healing to others that otherwise he never would have met before. So that broadened my perspective that, oh my gosh, it's not just me here. It's not just me in Georgia, growing up here. And then my mom, her first husband, who she began a business with and became very successful with, her first husband was one of the first people ever in the United States to be diagnosed with HIV. And so in the mid to late 70s, he was diagnosed. He accidentally gave it to his wife, and she died immediately. They didn't know what it was. She was one of the first heterosexual people to have been diagnosed in the early 80s with HIV. And it was kept totally secret, of course, because only the doctors knew it wasn't contagious, except through certain means. And so they ended up getting married as he got very sick, and it's a longer story, but he ultimately reconciles his sexuality and comes out as gay, which makes sense. He definitely got it from a man at the time. That was kind of how it was being transmitted. So when he came out as gay, I didn't find out he had AIDS until high school, so years after knowing him. He was the first, the CDC's in Atlanta, so he was doing a lot of experimental drugs. If you saw the Matthew McConaughey movie, what's it called?
Dallas Buyers Club.
Dallas Buyers Club. They were doing buyers clubs, and they were doing all that. And I didn't know. I was none the wiser, of course. And so anyway, they began a business together in spite of him being on the edge of death for who knows how long. And he lived for 20 some odd years with it. And so there was, at a very fundamental part of my life, late high school, I'm finding out my stepfather is gay and is dying of AIDS, and so you go, wait a minute, also a very religious and spiritual man. So all of this nonsense about gays in the church and everything, if any of that's true, then I have to reconcile my experience, and so I was raised, I was never a member of a church. My mom wouldn't, but we always went to church. We went to the church with the best music. And then the church that with the best music was 30 minutes away, and it was wild. They were talking in tongues and all this stuff. They had the best music, so that's why we went. But we would never be a member. And so, what a healthy sense of skepticism she had. But more to the point is on our way home. It was 30 minutes away, and on our way home, she would bribe us, me and my brother. She would give us $5 if we could talk about the sermon and ask questions all the way home for 30 minutes. And so my ass started taking notes on the program. I'm gonna get my money. And so I'm listening. I start listening. I'm 10 years old. I got to get paid, y'all. The hustle is real. And I'm 10 years old, and I'm listening to these sermons with a discerning ear, and I'm taking notes. And I'm all the way home. I'm going, what does that mean? What is that? What is he talking about? So there's a few things. My world is blown open by my father to show me that there is a world, and the world is suffering. And then my world is blown open at home by my stepfather to realize that the greatest health problem of the century is right here at home and living with me. And then the greatest cultural conflict is also right here at home living with me. And I've come to know both without realizing that that's what was happening. And then I was taught to question in a very healthy way religious authority, which taught me to question all authority, but to do it from an intelligent perspective, to listen deeply, to take notes, and to ask questions, not to confront, not to combat, but to dive deeply into it. And if you do, you get $5. So I think I would credit that raising, truly that raising. And it's funny because now I can see my, I live in a blue bubble here in Los Angeles, and I know that I've become much more liberal and progressive as I've gotten older. And I see my parents, my moms especially, my dad too, becoming more conservative as they get older. At least it seems that way. I don't really know because I wouldn't say that either hang their hat on it. But But it's very interesting because I've said before, I said, this is not how you raised me. Don't you remember? Don't you remember? This isn't how you raised me at all. You raised me believing that it was okay to have AIDS, be gay, and that God loves you. You raised me thinking the world is much larger than just the United States. Why would we worship the U.S. when the whole world is also equal to us? And you raised me to question every aspect of authority and not to buy into one man's vision of anything. And the Donald Trump thing really set up a different perspective there, I think. That would have been counter to anything that my mother would have raised me to do. You can't believe the preacher. Why would I believe just one president? So I would say that all of that set up a real mosaic of compassion for me. But that's the thing where I would credit it.
So that leads to something I find. There is a deep spirituality to your compassion. You've mentioned God. You also have some very Eastern philosophical undertones to a lot of what you do. So what is it that informed it? What is your spiritual existence? What does that look like for you? Curious.
So that's a great question. I'm rolling with Jesus, yo. That's what we like to say. But I would certainly call myself a Christian. Now you say that though, and you go, well, what do you mean by Christian? That's the problem.
It's fair.
Yeah. Because that can mean a whole lot of things. So my interest,
different types, yeah.
different types. And you bring up the Eastern philosophies, and absolutely, how beautiful. And so the way that I relate to my spirituality is one of my favorite things, and it's always been this. I've been very interested in this path. First time I mentioned Thomas Merton earlier, so I think what most accurately defines, if we have to categorize my spiritual understanding now, is I would certainly tell others that I'm a contemplative Christian, that I would be practicing a mystical Christianity, Christian mysticism, really, which is a very established form of Christianity. It's arguably the source of what we would know today as Christianity. Yeah. And it's always been around, and it's always made the most sense to me. And so when I was 18 was the first time I started reading Thomas Merton, who really brought that into the 20th century in a popular way. His writings were bestsellers, and he was very well known. And I got my hands on his books when I was around 18, and I went, oh, okay, I get it. I get what's going on here. You see people talking in tongues in the church, and, this is a mystical experience. This is an ecstatic and crazy thing that's going on, and they're not faking it. What's happening here? There must be more than what I see. And one of my teachers now, Father Richard Rohr, he describes a Christian as someone who sees Christ in everything. And how beautiful is that? And so I've come to see Christianity as a tradition through which we access the deepest knowings of God. And my understanding of it in that way has helped me to differentiate it and follow it to unification, if you will, to see it as a tradition that is rich and varied and full of not knowing and full of mystery. The Christian church is so beautifully wrapped around mystery that of course becomes informed by our egos and our need for power and all of these things. But at its root, even the voicing of the Trinity is to suggest a non-dualistic point of view here. And so in that way, I find a great deal of wisdom and peace and knowledge and a real compassion for others by seeing it through that lens. A Christian is someone who sees Christ in everything. And Christ, as of course, is not Jesus's last name, so there's the energy of that divine presence in all things. And that gives me a lot of peace, and it helps me to read scripture differently, helps me to, just the whole thing starts to open up, and we start to see what the other, each major tradition has its mystical wings, has its, the Sufis or the Kabbalists or the Zen Buddhists, we see the
Judaism has it.
Yes, absolutely. The Kabbalah. And so you have all of these mystical things underneath, maybe what we might say, maybe more more traditional expressions of a religion. So that's a very real practice for me, and I love it. It's the best, and it collides with everything I do. If you're listening closely to anything I ever talk about, this is what I'm talking about all the time.
There's this theme of a conversation. So as Rodney and I continue to formulate our I guess content, for lack of a better word in the moment, around compassion. We just talked about this earlier today. There are three pillars. There's personal experience, there's psychological understanding, and then there's religious and spiritual practice, right? Because compassion at its core is very anchored in religion. Like it is almost a core tenet to any religion that you have. And I think what you do is you exude the nature of our conversation and that very principle of healthy ego. Religion and spirituality and all of those practices at their base goodness is a healthy reflection of the benefits of ego. And they give structure and opportunity to access that existence. And they are unifying across every religion. And then compassion is at the core, self-compassion, compassion for others. But it's the unhealthy ego that then divides them and then creates all the mess that exists, because we can't get to that core. To Rodney's point, there's that existence of, you have to think like me and this, because this is the one core truth, right? This is the truth. And without this, you will be damned to hell. Totally introduces that unhealthy ego component of things. And I think you are a reflection of the embodiment of the positivities around why religion exists, and it exudes. And I love it, because I hear all the philosophies, but Christianity is your jam. You ride with Jesus, right? And it's just such a cool thing. And I just wanted to call it out.
Oh, that makes me feel
really
good.
is.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. I think that's so true. I love religion, and I love religions. Anytime, healthy religion is such a wonderful thing. It really is such a wonderful thing for I think it's a wonderful thing for everybody to have some tradition they adhere to. If for any other reason, then it grounds you in the idea that you're not in charge. It grounds you in the idea that you're not it. And man, if that's all it does for you, if that's all it does, give you access to a place where you don't have to be in charge, are not in charge, and realize that the world isn't circling around you, what a shift that would be for all of us if we were to ground ourselves in that. And, you hear this kind of, oh gosh, it's becoming more evident to me now, maybe because of our time, the insistence on a culture war. And that's the only way I know how to say it. It's an insistence that we're going to have one, and it's like, y'all. And I understand in some ways how people might say, I wish we were different. I wish we were more, I wish we had a healthier sense of humility in all of us. I wish we had a greater sense of community in all of us. I wish that we took care of each other differently in all of us. And I understand how someone could associate that with a certain type of religious adherence. And then I also understand this other thing that says, stop telling me how to be. Leave me alone. Let me express in my own way. And I can see how that would want to reject a form of religious adherence in a tradition. And so we can stoke those flames pretty easily when actually the truth is, it isn't the religion that is the problem. It is the relationship to the religion, or the ego infused into the religion, because we will do to all beautiful things. We will separate and destroy all beautiful things if left to our own devices. We did it with politics and government, which can be a beautiful thing. We've done it with religion. We've done it to the arts, and we've done it to the justice system. It is our nature to separate and then elevate one over the other. And we do that. And I don't know. I kind of imagine God looking down and being like, y'all, come on. I told you what to do. Why don't y'all just do what I told you to do? So anyway, there we go.
The good old God eye roll.
Eye roll going, oh man.
God, you guys are just messing it up.
Yeah, come on, guys. Okay, I'll send you another person to tell you what to do. Fine, I'll send another one.
That's good though. That's good though.
Yeah.
I really like that. I really like that.
That's really what listening is. It did act. Free listening is. It really did start for me with a prayer. It did, and I've told this story before, but I was crossing the street and a guy needed some money. This was when I was at rock bottom too. So, and I prayed with him instead, and just this ecumenical kind of prayer, And whoa, I just thought, wow, that is the healing I'm looking for. The removal of my ego simply to be on behalf of another person was just a little like soul massage for me. And I got across the street and I said, oh, should I do free prayer? Is that what I should do? That would be cool, by the way. And I thought, what is the closest thing to prayer? And I thought, that's where I literally thought, well, free listening would be the closest thing to free prayer I can think of. And that really is the crux of it all right there.
So, listen, Benjamin, this has been great. It's been so good getting to know you and having this conversation. So I want to thank you for your time, and really appreciate you taking this time with us. We ask the same question.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
It's been a good time, and I look forward to some more in the future. The last question probably won't be a shock, but it is, what does compassion mean to you?
Yeah, to me, compassion means to witness without judgment, is really what that means to me, to witness without judgment. And to witness with my eyes and my body and my ears and my presence, to witness without judgment, I think, is what I mean when I would say compassion. I think that's what it means.